Spiritual Power, Chapter 2, Material Substance. One of the first important generalizations made by man in his philosophical reasoning is that all things have body, material substance or stuff, of which their outward form is composed. The realization of the universal presence of matter, substance, body, or stuff is a basic element of man's thought. In fact, it is discovered to partake of the quality of intuitive knowledge. Our verbal terms employed in speech and writing illustrate the fundamental quality of this element of our thought. Our words were created primarily in response to the need of expressing our notions concerning material objects or activities. Even those terms designed to express our concepts of mental and spiritual things usually are really metaphorical terms in which material objects are employed as symbols illustrating the immaterial things. Thus, our terms spirit, psyche, ghost, etc. were originally employed to indicate breath, blowing wind, breezes, etc. Likewise, our minds almost instinctively identify material things as real things. Materiality is implicitly accepted as reality in our ordinary thought, at least until the latter has been disturbed by metaphysics. The term real represents a thing in substantive existence and not imaginary or merely existing as an idea. That which is reported as really existent is that which is discovered to be apparent to the senses or which registers its presence upon some physical instrument. That which is said to be all in your mind is not regarded as real in ordinary thought. The legal term real property illustrates this basic thought. Real property is property consisting of land and that which pertains to the land. And land is the most material thing known to man, therefore the most real thing to the ordinary thought. In view of these facts, it is not to be wondered that the human mind finds itself compelled to assume the existence of a universal material substance, stuff, or body, serving as the fundamental material of which all physical things are made, and also serving as a material base and ground, supporter, and sustainer of the universe of manifold things. All human thought tacitly assumes the existence of such a material, substantial ground and base, even where the mind has been muddled by too much metaphysical teaching and speculation. Human thought refuses really to believe that material things are mere fantasies or illusions, even though it tries to make itself believe it does so. No matter what it says, it always acts as if material things were real, present, and in evidence. That there must be substantial material or stuff underlying the forms of the physical universe is seen to be true by intellect, properly directed and employed, and intuition corroborates and substantiates the report. Intellect is unable to think except upon this fundamental premise. It finds itself dazed, bewildered, and confused when it attempts to proceed upon the opposite and contradictory fundamental premise, i.e., that there is no fundamental material substance, and that all appearance of matter is an illusion or product of thought or imagination. Intuition, likewise, finds itself compelled to report a similar truth which it finds within itself when asked the question. So true is this that intuition, confronted with the contentions of the extreme idealists that ask to corroborate their reports, experiences a sinking feeling as though the bottom of things were giving way beneath its feet, leaving naught but an empty void or abysmal abyss in place of the substantial foundation upon which it has been standing. It detects the falsity of the report in a moment, however, and indignantly rejects it. The average individual, the common sense person who is not indulged in too much metaphysical thought, also has this fundamental consciousness of the necessary existence of a basic substantial stuff, a fundamental material, out of which the bodies and physical forms of things are composed and created. He finds himself unable to think of a universe in which materiality is absent. He finds that material, substance, and stuff are necessities of his thought, facts without which his thought and reasoning cannot proceed. In spite of this pretended acquiescence in the teachings of idealism, No person ever has been able actually to conceive or imagine the universe as lacking the stuff of which its forms are made. The demand for stuff is persistent and insistent in the mind of man. Try as he may, man is never able actually to think away the primal concept of stuff. It refuses to be thought out of existence. Even the recent idea of the so-called dematerialization of matter has not affected this necessity of thought. The dematerialized matter, though no longer matter in the old scientific conception, is nonetheless constituent substance or fundamental stuff. The intellectual and intuitive demand for the presence of an elemental substance or fundamental stuff arises not only by reason of the perception that there is a physical or material aspect to each and everything known to man in experience, but also because the philosophic mind realizes the need for a substantial base and ground to explain and account for the changing forms of the physical and material universe. Substance, material or stuff of some kind, even though it be conceived as infinitely rare, tenuous, fine, ethereal, subtle, is demanded by intellect and intuition. You may test this fundamental report for yourself if you so wish. You have merely to try to think of a thing, anything in fact, as existing without body, substance, material, or stuff to support it, give it form, and to afford it material upon which to work and manifest itself. You cannot think of form, configuration, appearance without the fundamental attribute of substance, material, or stuff. To try to escape from stuff or substance is like trying to run away from your own shadow, trying to turn around so quickly that you can kiss your own lips, or trying to make your face and the back of your head meet. It is like the effort to think of a stick with only one end, or of a lever without a support, or of a wheel without an axle. You will discover very soon and at the end that the notion of at least an ethereal substance, material, or stuff is required to support your concept of things. You may do without matter of the solid kind, or even of the liquid or gaseous kind. In fact, science itself has done this for you and has given you something infinitely finer and rarer than these, but you must hold on to your conception of substance or stuff of some kind. You may think of it in terms of ethereal substance, astral substance, spiritual substance, or in other terms coined to designate substance more subtle and ethereal than ordinary matter. But the essential idea of substance and stuff must be involved in it if you intend to employ it in your thinking. Throw the idea of substantial stuff out the door and it returns through the windows. You are unable even to think of spirit other than as employing stuff for that aspect of bodiness which is required for its manifestation. You must endow it with at least a ghost of stuff or a shadow of substance. Your only escape from the necessity of the idea of stuff is to think of things in terms of algebraic symbols as X, Y, or Z, and let it go at that. Even those thinkers who deny the ultimate reality of matter or material substance usually accept its presence as a derivative material or stuff in order to account for and explain the constantly changing multitude of material things. There is perceived the need for a fundamental base and ground to support and sustain the changing material universe, the need of a something or somewhat, which is the answer to the question, what is it that changes? What is it that supports and sustains the changes? What is it that remains itself constant and continuous throughout the universal changes? Philosophy has always had as its great aim and purpose the discovery of an ultimate substantial reality sufficient to serve as the base or ground supporting and sustaining that continuous series or concatenation of changing things, processes, and events which constitute the phenomenal universe. In philosophy, the term reality denotes that which remains constant as the kernel or core of universal change and becoming. Plato asserts that the end of philosophy is the discovery of the essential identity supporting, sustaining, and underlying the changing universe of changing things. Kant held that ultimate reality is the real in time, that which persistently, constantly, and continuously abides while all else changes. Herbert Spencer held that only the real is permanent, only the permanent is real. In the earlier stages of this inquiry, you became acquainted with Nicholas Murray Butler's question: what is it that persists amidst all changes and that underlies every change? Philosophy demands on ultimate, constant, fundamental substance to support and sustain the material world of change and becoming, and to serve as its base and ground. By constant is meant steady, perpetual, unchanging, invariable, unceasing, continuous, uninterrupted, stable, firm, enduring, permanent. By change is meant any variation or alteration, any passing from one state, form, or condition to another. Becoming means the act of entering into a new form, state, or condition from another. Here you should note the term form in scientific and philosophic usage means not only the shape, figure, or configuration of anything, but also the constitution, conditional arrangement, organization, or system of anything, as for instance, water assumes the form of ice, or carbon manifests in the form of the diamond. Material change and becoming proceed by means of transmutation, i.e., change of one nature, character, or substance into another, or transformation, i.e., change of one form, shape, or appearance to another. Scientific investigation and philosophical reasoning disclose the fact that all existing material things in the universe, all material objects, things, events, undergoing the process of change and becoming. All material things, A, arise originally and come into existence from some preceding material thing or things through the process of change and becoming. They, B, abide temporarily poised in existence in a state of change and becoming. They, C, finally pass out of existence into subsequent material forms, states, or conditions through the process of change and becoming. Nothing is constant but change, says the old philosopher. Everything and all things exist in a state of flux and becoming, says another of equal antiquity. Change and becoming are basic facts of objective material existence and are manifest in every part of the physical universe, in everything, and in the universe as a whole. Nothing escapes change and becoming. That is, nothing except the power that causes the change and becoming. Creation proceeds by change. Evolution proceeds by change. The law of change enforces its edicts upon all alike, upon high and low, great and small, good and bad, none escape it. All physical activities, all phenomenal events are perceived to be processes of change and becoming. Everything has its birth in and from something else, its temporary poised existence, its final passing away, all under process of change and becoming. The cosmos is perceived to be a cosmic process. Nothing abides, everything passes. Everything arises in something precedent and disappears into something subsequent. No thing arises from nothingness, nor passes into nothingness. The universe is like a great flame. It seems to be the same identical thing throughout its whole existence. And in one sense, it is so. But in another sense, it is not the same identical thing for even 2 consecutive seconds of time. From the strict technical viewpoint, the flame is seen to be merely a process of combustion, a series of successive burning particles. But from another viewpoint, it is seen and felt that there is an underlying something or somewhat, a constant substantial unity and identity of reality and meaning underlying the process of changes. Intellect, made dizzy by this constant and continuous process of change and becoming, at times experiences the fear that its world may be built upon sinking sand rather than upon solid rock. Accordingly, it demands and receives assurance and reassurance from intuition concerning the existence of a constant fundamental substance underlying all change and becoming. Intuition assures intellect that there is and must be a fundamental substance that persists and remains constant throughout all changes, that underlies and supports all changes of form, state, and conditions of material things, something constant and stable, immutable and firm, forever and ever. Intellect, accordingly, 2,000 years ago or more, formulated a law of thought which embodies this report of intuition. A thing always remains itself and nothing but itself, notwithstanding the manifold states, forms, and conditions which it assumes or undergoes and under which it manifests and presents itself in appearance. This axiomatic truth, carried to its logical conclusion, leads directly to the final conception of an ultimate fundamental substance. As Dallek says, every consistent application of the laws of thought seems perforce to conduct to an unconditioned constant situated at the root of all things. All human thinking, without exception, operates with the concept of a constant substance lying at the root of things. Thou, critic, must conform thyself to this rule. It is a necessity of thought. Much of the opposition in the conception of fundamental substance, material, or stuff as an ultimate fact or principle, both in ancient and in modern philosophic thought, both of Occidental and Oriental philosophy, has arisen from a misconception of the essential nature of that ultimate fact or principle. In its form of matter, it has been thought of as gross, solid, heavy stuff. When the term matter has been employed, the mind has proceeded immediately to conceive of something like, for instance, a block of granite, an ingot of steel, a lump of clay, or a mass of mud. This was particularly true in the case of Western world philosophy. The Oriental philosophy, on the other hand, has always held that substance, matter, or stuff, in its essential, elemental, ultimate state, form, or condition, is something quite different from this, quite opposite to it, in fact. The ancient Oriental philosophies have always posited fundamental material substance as something infinitely fine, infinitely rare, infinitely tenuous, subtle, ethereal, something as much finer than the finest gas, as the latter is finer than a piece of hard metal or stone, something infinitely finer than even that hypothetical universal ether of modern Western science. Modern Western science in time arrived at the conclusion that the ultimate elements of matter were infinitesimal particles called atoms of almost incredible fineness, lightness, and tenuity. Of these, the grosser and more solid forms of matter were held to be worked up, made or manufactured by natural forces. There were held to be from 80 to 90 such classes of elemental atoms, and science was well on its way to resolving these into the lightest and finest of them all, i.e., the atom of hydrogen, and of holding that the other atoms are compounds or derivatives of this ultimate stuff. But before this point was reached, radium was discovered, and the atom was found not to be the ultimate form of matter at all, but rather to be composed of something still finer and more elemental, i.e., the electrons, ions, or corpuscles of an infinitely tenuous ethereal substance. The present conception of modern science concerning the ultimate nature of matter is expressed in the following extracts from a lecture delivered a few years ago by Sir William Crookes. Physicists are now saying that there is a possibility that there is no such thing as matter, as formerly understood by that term. Some say that the electron is pure disembodied electricity, thus approaching the old idea of Boscovich, accepted by Faraday, that the atom is only a center of force. The idea of the chemical elements as something absolutely primary and ultimate has grown less and less distinct until today we admit the possibility of resolving them into simpler forms or else refining them away altogether. When we have split the atom into hundreds of little bits, these residual particles turn out to be nothing more than superimposed layers of positive and negative electricity. Another scientist adds, Crookes refrained from telling us what would happen if some clever researcher of the future should discover a method of making these alternative layers of plus and minus cancel each other out of existence. Einstein goes even further. He posits matter as consisting of infinitesimal centers of disturbance in something still more ethereal, the nature of which he does not even attempt to explain or speculate about. The electrons are estimated to be so extremely small that millions of them might be gathered on the point of the finest needle, and to be so tenuous and light that an atom of hydrogen gas would be solid as compared with them. But Einstein goes beyond this, as may be seen by reference to the statement of Sir Joseph Thomson in a recent article in a British scientific magazine as follows. The size of the centers of disturbance, which in Einstein's theory are associated with matter, bears to the size of the electron about the same proportions that the size of the smallest particle visible under the most perfect microscope bears to the size of the Earth itself. These discoveries and experiments have been regarded as bringing about the dematerialization of matter, and so they do if the old conception of matter be employed in making the statement. But there are other and far better philosophical conceptions of ultimate substance, as we shall see presently. Before passing on, we may venture to call your attention to the fact that even these newly discovered ultimate particles are given the attributes of size, shape, and form. They are held to have extension and to occupy space. Whatever has size, shape, form, or extension, whatever occupies space, no matter how little space, comes clearly within the basic category of substance, matter, or stuff. And upon the most extreme of the new school of physicists are forced to admit that the idea of electricity without substance, body, or stuff is practically inconceivable. At the last, they are seen to have merely discovered a still finer and more elemental substance, material or stuff, in which electricity finds its necessary body. The comparative immateriality and dematerialization of this new form of substance, material or stuff, discovered by science is indicated in the following statement by John Burroughs, the eminent naturalist. Science, the new science, pursues matter to the vanishing point where it ceases to be matter and becomes pure force or spirit. What takes place in the imaginary world where ponderable matter ends and becomes disembodied force, and where the hypothetical atoms are no longer indivisible, we may conjecture, but we may never know. The atomic theory of matter leads us into a non-material world, or a world of inverse of the solid three-dimensional world that our senses reveal to us, or to matter in a fourth estate. We know solids and fluids and gases, but emanations, which are neither, we know only as spirits or ghosts by dream or hearsay. Yet this fourth or ethereal state of matter seems to be the final, real, and fundamental position. How it differs from spirit, it is not easy to define. Science strips matter of its grossness. When it is done with it, it is no longer the obstructive something that we know and handle. It is reduced to pure energy. The line between it and the spirit does not exist. Burroughs, however, was carried a bit too far in his wonder concerning the new conceptions of matter. Pure energy in the absence of substance or stuff is inconceivable. Pure force is meaningless, as we shall see when we pass on to the consideration of energy and force in the following section of this book. And as we shall see elsewhere, there is a decided line of distinction between this conception and that of spirit, the distinction consisting of the fact that spirit explains life, whereas neither matter nor pure force can do so. But Burroughs was quite correct when he referred to this fourth or ethereal state of matter, which seems to be the final, real, and fundamental position. For this is just what the ancient Oriental sages have always held that ultimate substance is and must be, and what modern science was beginning to see that it must be before its thought was distracted by the new discoveries above referred to, and to which position it must again return. Science has long been dreaming of an ethereal state of matter and has made an attempt to posit it in the somewhat imperfect and indefinite hypothesis of the universal ether. After the discrepancies of the electronic theory have been ironed out, reconciled, or canceled away, it will be found that science will return to its former position concerning the ultimate ethereal state of matter. In fact, many eminent scientists have never entirely let go of that idea, and they are now beginning once more to push it to the front of scientific thought. Many careful scientific minds are even now holding that the electrons, ions, or corpuscles, the disembodied electricity or the centers of disturbance of the new theories are but points, vortex rings, or centers of disturbance in and of ethereal substance, matter, or stuff. This ethereal substance, or the ether, is held by science to fill all space, to be infinitely light, tenuous, and imponderable, so much so that, as one critic said, it is matter with the properties of a vacuum, for it fills even the space from which the air has been extracted. It abides even between the particles of air and gas, even between the elements, ions, points of electricity, or the centers of disturbance previously mentioned. So thoroughly essential and ultimate is it, so truly is it ethereal, that it has been called an infinite possibility of things rather than a thing itself. Yet scientific experiments have proved conclusively that it exists, or in extreme cases of conservative caution, that something like it exists. This is modern Western science reaching out its hand to the conception of ancient Oriental philosophy. Thus, it is reaching an agreement with the ancient teaching of ultimate ethereal substance. The article in the Encyclopedia Britannica, 11th edition, dealing with the subject of the ether, says that the ether is a material substance of a more subtle kind than visible bodies, supposed to exist in those parts of space which are apparently empty. It also refers to it as being regarded as differing from ordinary matter in degree, but not in kind. It also speaks of the scientific conception of the atomic particles of matter as being each the nucleus or core of an intrinsic modification impressed on the surrounding region of the ether. This might conceivably be of the nature of a vortical motion of a liquid rounding a ring core, thus giving a vortex atom, or of an intrinsic strain of some sort radiating from a core, which would give an electric atom. Finally, it speaks of the recent scientific discoveries of radioactivity and of the free electron, etc., and adds, these results constitute a far-reaching development of the modern or electrodynamic theory of the ether, of which the issue can hardly be seen. We shall have more to say concerning the ethereal state of matter, the ether of science as related to the ultimate ethereal substance of Oriental philosophy, when we reach a later point of this instruction. For the present, we are content to leave it with you merely as a concept and idea of an infinitely ethereal substance extended throughout all space, in which all material things abide, move, and have their being, and which is the material substance and stuff from which the bodiness of all material things is constituted, composed, and made up. If you wish to form a mental picture of this essential substance, you may try the experiment by beginning with a mental picture of the hardest, most solid form of matter, then passing through the stages of thinner solids and through liquids from thickest to thinnest, and then through gases from heaviest to lightest, and then on to infinity of refinement, reduction, and resolution, resulting in an absolutely elemental existence. Then you will have found at least the direction in which the concept of that ultimate substance, that ultimate ether, must be looked for and sought.